It's football and other F words, and the original duo, sort of original duo, are back. Uh, we have a lot to catch up on because we haven't really talked in about it's about now a full week and several days. Not even the text. We haven't really texted a lot. We hadn't even
Yeah.
group chatted enough. So we got a lot to go through. Obviously, I was with the Senior Bowl with Stoney, so thanks to Stoney for filling in on football and other efforts last week. Thanks to our travel sponsor Lines 4, and of course, thanks to our always forever sponsor, Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Over 50 years, there's a lot of champagne you should have bought from Bluegrass Beverages to celebrate everything that is going right with the Tennessee Titans for once. And guess what? If you thought you ran out of occasions to go to Bluegrass Beverages and buy yourself a champagne bottle, you haven't. Because it should be noted that high first round draft pick Brock Bowers is coming to the Tennessee Titans is set in stone because he said on a random interview on Fox Sports that he loves Tennessee Titans. So that means he's 100% get drafted. So pop your champagne bottles, everybody, and let's celebrate. Brock Bowers' seasons is here. It finally happened. We kind of we joked this into existence, I think, at some point because we have talked about numerous times that this is what's going to happen and everybody's going to freak out, and now here it is. So Bluegrass Beverages for all your draft celebration needs, they are ready for it. Mike, let's just start off the top rope. Of course, Titans Twitter, Titans X, as unhinged as they are, decides to take go insanely bonkers over a draft prospect saying they want to play for the Tennessee Titans. For those that may not know, Jalen Ramsey obviously became a Tennessee Titans because he was a Tennessee Titans fan growing up and he was in the area. So this will for sure mean, and it deserves all the reaction that it is getting on Titans Twitter. It deserves all the overblown, out of proportion tweets on Twitter about team building and analytics and all this stuff. It deserves it because this will for sure happen. Brock Bowers, Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, anytime a player wants to play for a specific team, then it's automatic that you have to draft them. That
100%.
is set in stone. So, yeah, I mean, unless Brock Bowers actually comes out and says, "I will refuse to sign with any team besides the Tennessee Titans," and I'm forcing my way there. In which case the Titans should take him in the seventh round with their last pick.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I mean, unless
They
that
hold all the
happens,
leverage now.
it's a non-story. I saw
Because no team's going to
somebody.
draft a guy that obviously says he wants to go play for the Tennessee Titans because, I mean, he's obviously an idiot. And he's probably too tall for some general managers.
True. He's very intimidating. That figure, that Brock Bowers. Yeah, I mean, I think I saw somebody in my mention saying something like, "Well, teams might hesitate to draft him now if he says he wants to play." No, come on, man. Like nobody gives it. Like George Kittle wants to play for the Titans too, but like, I mean, it doesn't matter
Well, he's
because
on
he's
his
under
second
contract with
contract
the
with the Titans,
Niners.
right? Isn't he on the second contract with the Tennessee Titans because he obviously got a home here? Remember Aaron Rodgers? He's a
Oh, true.
Tennessee Titan. He bought his home here.
Yeah, Tom
We
Brady
know
was
that Rex
touring
Ryan and
NBA.
Rob Ryan and Bill Belichick are all coaches here for the Tennessee Titans because
Right.
they also have homes here. And of course, Jim Nance is the dedicated voice of the Tennessee Titans because he also lives here. This has
And
nothing to do with anything. I'm gonna be honest. I put Brock Bowers everywhere I could in the titles because I know it'll get the people going, and this was the right time to do it. It's the first time I've ever been so clickbaity with an article or with it's clear. It's so clear because this means absolutely nothing. But I do think this brings up a good discussion to have, and this discussion is kind of twofold because you have a tweet out there that I'm not necessarily sold on some of the prospects you put on there, but this takes us to a discussion of blue chip prospects as well. But Bill Callahan, in the debate between wide receiver and offensive tackle, Bill Callahan has said numerous times that he wants a player that in the final seconds of a game he can go to and rely on.
Brian
He's going to
Callahan.
score a touchdown. Yeah, sorry, Brian Callahan. Did I say Bill?
You said Bill, yeah.
Damn, that was bad on play. But he said that I want a player that I can go to that is that can rely on in the final minutes of the game to get a long gain or get that game-winning gain or score.
Yeah.
Ever since wide receiver, just throwing that out there, Brock Bowers does still fit that mold. And me and Tony, I think we disagreed, and we talked a lot of football. Maybe I don't want to take his words out of context, but he's kind of hesitant to put Brock Bowers as a blue chipper, but I think Brock Bowers is a blue chipper. Is it the worst thing in the world if certain players are gone that, okay, Brock Bowers is 7? That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I do view Bowers as a blue chipper. And now he's not the guy that like I want them to take at 7 as far as like my top choice. But if he ends up as a Titan, it's not a bad thing at all. And I think people get too hung up on this whole like, well, tight end versus wide receiver thing. Like they are pass catchers, and Brock Bowers is definitely to me in the mold of Travis Kelce, in the fact that like Travis Kelce's really just a big receiver. That's the way the Chiefs use him. That's the function that he is in their offense, really. To me, like Bowers, you could use the same way, and not to say that he is Travis Kelce necessarily, because he's still got to prove that to a large degree. But the college tape and the college production is very Travis Kelce esque, and I could absolutely see him more so than any other tight end prospect. Really out of and even Kyle Pitts. Like I know people throw out the Kyle Pitts thing, but like to me, Kyle Pitts did not have anywhere close to the production that Brock Bowers has had at the college level. The tape is not nearly as good as what Brock Bowers is.
But even when Kyle Pitts was coming out, wasn't everybody say just wait for Brock Bowers? Like,
yes,
I mean, I feel like everybody's been talking about Brock Bowers for like the last 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like ever since he was a freshman, because he put up crazy numbers as a true freshman at a position where true freshmen almost never put up big numbers. So I mean, look, Bowers is to me an exception. Like, and I do agree. Like, look, tight end in the first round is not usually the best bet if you look historically, and if you look at where some of the better tight ends in the NFL have come from. But to me, like there are exceptions to every rule. To me, Bowers screams exception based on his play, based on his tape, based on his production, based on everything about him. I'm in on Brock Bowers as like a blue chip prospect, even though, would I rather have Malik Neighbors? Yes. Would I rather have Joe Alt? Yes. But like, if the Titans ended up with Bowers, I'm not going to be mad about it. I mean, give me playmakers. Brock Bowers is without a doubt a playmaker.
There's a Grand Canyon-sized gap. I mean, listen, there is a light years, let's say, between the Earth and Jupiter is the difference between talent level of Brock Bowers and Chig Okonkwo at this point. I mean, like you can't just say, well, they don't Brock Bowers. You can't draft Brock Bowers because you have Chig Okonkwo and Josh Whyle. Well, first off, neither of the guys that wanted Chig Okonkwo is inside the building, right? And Chig Okonkwo showed you that he cannot be relied on for the first 8 weeks of the season. And now he's learning an entirely new system, and he probably can't be relied on the first 8 weeks next season. Josh Whyle is a 5th round pick, and he's Josh Whyle. This is Brock Bowers. There's an entirely big difference. But you have Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors as blue chip prospects.
Mm-hmm.
I am on the border with Malik Neighbors. I don't think Rome Odunze is a blue chip prospect. So I'm not asking you to really defend, not to get an argument or anything. I'm just where are you at on the quarterbacks though? Because me and Stoney were talking, and I don't know if I'm putting any quarterback as a blue chip prospect.
I go back and forth with Caleb Williams because I don't know how much of the off field stuff is overblown. I think from a talent standpoint, he's a very clear blue chip prospect, and I don't know what to make of the off the field stuff. Is it overblown? Is it people misunderstanding him? Is it all narrative? Or is it real? Like I have no idea because I don't know the kid personally. I don't know anything. I don't have any behind the scenes like contacts within the USC program or Oklahoma program or anything like that. So to me, just based off of what I can observe, I have Caleb Williams as a blue chipper. And I would have Drake May as well. I think
so?
He's super talented. And honestly, like I don't know. I might consider Jaden Daniels too. Like as much as that
I think
surprises
Jaden
me.
Daniels out of the three of them is the most blue chip prospect. But I
Yeah,
don't think I'm putting it depends on what your definition of blue chip prospect is. Like, is it like the best of the best in just this particular draft class, or a guy that you are guaranteeing that's going to be a multi-time All Pro, or just a Pro Bowler? Which being a Pro Bowler doesn't matter anymore. So glad that I won that argument between you and Lebowski. That these Pro Bowls don't matter anymore. The cutoff
wait,
is done.
when was
Whenever
I
Tyler Hunt
arguing about Pro Bowlers being
for Hall of
important?
Fame, for Hall of Fame, it
Oh,
does not
well,
matter
yeah.
anymore for
I
the
think
Hall of
it
Fame.
okay, I think it does get used for Hall of Fame debate, but
I
I
think
don't think
there's a
it really
cutoff now
matters.
that Tyler Huntley and Gardner Minshew have been on teams back to back. I think we're done. I think they do. You
I
you
have
can you can have it from 2000 or from 1950 whenever these guys are going to the Pro Bowl from 1950 to 2020. You can use Pro Bowls. I think for anybody else after that, Pro Bowls are done. I think
yeah,
they're done. They're done.
probably fair.
So what do you define a blue chip prospect in your mind?
I guess to me it's a prospect that has like a, a ceiling that is like top 5 at his position in the NFL and a very reasonable path towards getting there. Like, can I close my eyes and see in 2 years Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels or Brock Bowers being a top 5 player at his position in the NFL
Okay.
and going to like being on all pro, lists, if not getting the selection, is he getting votes and things like that? That's kind of how I would, and it's subjective, right? Like that's not like a hard and fast deal,
No,
but
no, no.
to me, that's
I just
kind of
wondered
how I
what your
define
definition
blue
because I
chip.
don't know. Like it all depends on landing spot. Like I think that's where it is for me for the quarterbacks.
Yeah,
Is that I didn't care where Joe Burrow landed. I thought Joe Burrow's a blue chip prospect.
yeah,
These guys though don't have that like bulletproof. I'm gonna work wherever I land kind of feeling to them. And so maybe that's why I'm a little bit out on it because I'm like, well, that's they're really dependent. But like Peter Skoronsky, blue chip prospect. I as a
yeah,
guard, I
yeah,
didn't never had him as a tackle, but as a guard. And I was looking back at my list last year. I had Brian Branch was on there, and I
yeah.
thought that he was a blue chipper, and he was my
He went
borderline. He's like
second
my
round, right? Or was it late first?
yeah, late first, because
Or no, he
the
did get
inside
into the second,
linebacker
right?
did he? I thought
I'm
they traded
fairly certain.
both him and no, it was Sam Laporta in the first, wasn't it?
No,
But
Brian
I had him as a
Branch.
blue chip prospect wherever he was at,
He was
and
a second
I'm
round pick,
like,
pick
wow,
45.
that's crazy.
Because
But
you're thinking about Jack Campbell. Because
yeah,
they
Jack
went
Campbell I thought was in the
Jameer
second
Gibbs,
round.
Jack Campbell, and then Sam Laporta, Brian Branch. What
Oh,
a
I
draft, by the
swear,
way!
yeah. By the way, did you
Unbelievable.
see his little press
Yeah,
conference where he was calling everybody out? Good for him.
yeah. What?
And he should call those nerds
He,
out.
well, yeah, he should. I mean, he's got the skins on the wall.
And I agree with Andrew King. Branch should have been top 15 at the very least. And I thought him falling was insane.
Yeah,
But it brings me to this overall feeling from the Tennessee Titans. And we have, since we've last talked, Denard Wilson, defensive coordinator, Steven Jackson in an unnamed position at this point, but it's assumed somewhere in the secondary. Frank Bush, unnamed position, but probably linebackers of some sort, has been hired. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you have Nick Holtz, not Holes, but Holtz. That's unfortunate. I was really hoping it was going to be Holes, but Holtz as the offensive coordinator, Bill Callahan as the offensive line coach, Tyke Tolbert as the wide receiver coach. And it's being assumed right now that Justin Otten is being kept on as running back coach for the Tennessee Titans. So, which I'm fine with. So looking at all of this, because the big discussion in your article is talking about what Bill Callahan has done. We've heard what Brian Callahan has said. We see the prospects that are available at the moment. We see that Bill Callahan is a kingmaker for the offensive line. He's done a lot with first and second rounders and all this kind of stuff, but he's done tremendous work with guys that are not of that caliber and pedigree throughout his career. And everybody wants to debate left tackle, or wide receiver, and I get to this point where I'm like, you guys may need to brace yourselves. Depending on how the draft falls, could be neither. It could be something way out of the blue. Because I think from what we've heard from Chad Brinker and Rand Carthon, we'll talk about that in a minute. I feel like the best player available is still in play for every round of this draft. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it is like, and I don't think that the Titans have to pigeonhole themselves. Like they're not going to put themselves in a position where they are pigeonholed into taking one spot or another, because look, you don't know who's going to be there. It's possible that you get the two quarterbacks at the top, and then you go, or even three quarterbacks at the top, which I think is still the most likely way that this goes. And then you go Harrison, Neighbors, Adunze, 4, 5, and 6, and there's no wide receiver worth taking on the board at 7. You could see Alton Fashanu go 5 and 6 right in front of you. So like, there's no guarantee that there's gonna be that prospect that you want available at pick 7. So like, you can't enter the draft with just no option at left tackle, or no real option at wide receiver besides what you've already got on the roster. They're going to have to add in free agency, and it's going to have to be a both solution. So like Jonah Williams, for example, sign him as your stopgap left tackle option. Hey, if you
No,
had to start
not
the
him. We cannot. There's certain people on Twitter that have been pushing for Jonah Williams. You're gonna have to choose someone else to champion on this podcast.
I'm not like, okay, I'm not a
I know you're not
big
champion.
Jonah
Let's use
Williams
somewhat
guy.
different. Let's use Tyron Smith or something.
Okay, Tyron Smith.
Not,
Like,
not Jonah Williams.
Like, if you sign Tyron Williams and then you have a passable solution. So like, if you don't take Alt or Fashanu, like if those guys aren't available, you can start the season with Tyron Smith, and then probably you're still going to draft a tackle at some point and try to develop them into the Tyron Smith replacement that you'll need in like week 6 when he goes down with a ruptured Achilles or whatever he's going to end up
Just
being,
Jalen Duncan.
whatever's going to get hurt. Right. And I do think that those young guys now with Bill Callahan on staff are a little bit more intriguing, like even Nicholas Petit Frere, Dylan Radins, Jalen Duncan, all those guys. Like, I think you can sit there and say there's a path forward now to like those guys figuring out, because I don't think any of those guys are limited physically, really. Like, I mean, Radins is a pretty good
Right. I'd agree.
athlete. Nicholas Petit Frere is a really good athlete. I think Jalen Duncan's a really good athlete. They're all big. They're all strong. They've all got length. They're powerful. It's a technique thing with them. It's technique and consistency and mental processing, even as far as like picking up stunts. Those are coachable. Those are literally what Bill Callahan is here to do and fix. So like, I'm not necessarily saying the Titans should enter this season planning on all those guys to take huge steps forward and do stuff that we've never seen them do before. But if you wanted to take, that group and throw them into the mix with, Daniel Brunskill, and with, in addition on the right side, like Michael Onwenu, and see like who comes out of that, because somebody probably is going to come out of that and be okay. I'm good with that. Like, you don't have to get all 5 new starters or all 4 new starters around Peter Skoronski. You can take some new guys, mix them in with the old guys, and see kind of what comes out of it. And that's what I wrote about really at paulkarsky.com today, is Bill Callahan, his effect on previous teams, and then what the Titans could do to have a similar leap to like almost every team that he's gone to has immediately gotten much better on the offensive line, including the Browns, who jumped from 17th and 29th in PFF run or pass and run blocking, respectively, in 2019 to first in both categories in Bill Callahan's first year in 2020. And like, look, I don't think the Titans are going to have undisputably the best offensive line in football this year. But is there a path to like a top 5 offensive line? Absolutely. Like, because they've already laid out the blueprint for what that looks like. And I think that's in play with a few addition. Like, you can't just have him do it with the guys that are already here. You're going to have to add, but it's in play. Like, there's a path towards that.
I believe it. Who did I say said this morning? Oh, it was Duke Manyweather on that does the O-line masterminds said that absolutely Bill Callahan gives you flexibility about where and who to spend your offensive line on. And I think that's ultimately where I land, because I think that with the signing of Bill Callahan and with what you have heard Brian Callahan say, what we know but from coming from the draft room is that like Zay Flowers was their number one wide receiver on the board, but they all ultimately chose as a collective, in quotation marks, Peter Skoronski. That at this point you have to expect that if you were making a big board, obviously the quarterbacks don't really factor in. They would obviously be there somewhere, but your non-quarterback players would likely look Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and then like Roma Dunze 3A and maybe Joe Alt 3B. And then I don't think Olu Fashanu is right after that. Like, I think that from what I've seen, Daniel Jeremiah's big board movement and all this kind of stuff, and what I've heard some people say, I think that there could be Brock Bowers, a Terrion Arnold, a Jerzon Newton, which would make my skin crawl. But there are players I think that could possibly be on their board higher than Olu Fashanu. Could even be Brian Thomas, who I think is probably, out of all the first-round wide receivers, I think I'm leaning that like Brian Thomas the most. So we'll see how it all ends out. But I think people need to brace themselves. I think these people who are very steadfast in that it has to be left tackle, so it will be left tackle. I think they need to be flexible in their approach to how they view this draft, because we still haven't hit free agency yet.
And look, like people get too, I think, kind of tied up with the idea that like, well, most people view Alton Fashanu as the top two tackles in the draft. So that must be the way that it really is, that it's a very clear pecking order. It's really not that clear. And frankly, like not even among media guys. Like if you look at big boards like Mel Kiper Jr., Daniel Jeremiah, those guys, some of those guys have, Talise Fuaga in that top two or above, either Alt or Fashanu. Talise Fuaga.
Now he goes by Tally to make it easy on everybody, by the way. So
okay.
So if you call him Tally Fuaga, Tally and Callie. What did we just stumble on?
But I mean, like that. It could be Fuaga. It could be J.C. Latham. It could be Mims. Like it could be even Tyler Guyton, who I'm not like super high on, but there are other tackles in this class that teams could have preferences for over Fashanu or over Alt. Now, I don't necessarily have them in that order, but I'm not sure that it's crazy to think that, hey, maybe the Titans are going to like Fuaga better than Fashanu. That's not crazy. Like, that's not like a, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened sort of leap to make. And look, we talk about all the time that NFL big boards do not generally line up as exact as media big boards, because we all turn into this big hive mind this time of year where like everyone's looking at the same stuff and talking about the same stuff, and then you begin to almost like feel like you have to be on board with certain players in certain spots, otherwise you're going to be ostracized or ridiculed.
Well, it's also a general consensus thing, right? You're not looking at it from a NFL team perspective. You're looking at it from a league-wide kind of perspective, like, oh, of course your quarterbacks have to be up here near the top, even though they may not be the best players, because quarterbacks more value than anything else. So, like, for me, we're actually going to do this for Football and or for Stacking the Inbox. Last year, towards the end of the draft, I did my horizontal vertical big board. And that's how most teams build their big boards. You've heard Rand say it a few times. That's how they do it. You take your vertical big board, then you put it out in horizontal stuff based on the team needs, based on what you think is a better player and stuff like that. Your philosophical board. Me and Stoney are going to take his big board that when he finishes up, and we are going to build one, and we're going to film a few rounds for everybody to see what we think the Titans would be discussing in a war room together, building a big board, which Rand said today, and this is pretty obvious, but Rand said today, or I guess the podcast came out today or last night on the Official Titans podcast, that they pretty much had to rebuild the entire freaking thing, which is not surprising. But there is a backboard for your undrafted free agents, stuff like that. Andrew King says, but for the most part, you're looking at it and you're like, yeah, of course they had to redo their entire big board and all this kind of stuff. So, like, to me, I'm not so caught up in this idea that other analysts are, where they're saying it's going to be a left tackle, blah, 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 blah. I just allow myself the possibility that, first off, that left tackle may not be there. And just because that left tackle is not there doesn't mean that they're going to reach for another left tackle. And also, I'm not a fan of Amarius Mims and other stuff, but maybe they view a right tackle higher than they view a left tackle. There's JC Latham is out there. Like you said, Tali Fuaga, who is just he gets his paws on you, you're dead. Like, you are done. But I prefer, like, if I were building my big board, Joe Alt number 1, right? Then Marvin Harrison Jr. I put him over Marvin Harrison Jr. for me, because I know that Tennessee Titans just need a left tackle, but I don't think they view it that way.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that they should either. I mean, the most important thing is that you come away with a elite player out of that pick, whatever you do. I mean, if you can trade back and still get that elite player, great. I am not really huge on trading back out of that pick, actually, unless the board just falls in a really weird way.
I kind of am.
Really?
But I would prefer to trade back in the second.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I think you're going to get more than what you gave up for Will Levis last year. I think you're going to get more in this year's draft. But I really like Fuaga. And if Alu keeps dropping like everybody is kind of talking about, but I really like Fuaga. I like JC Latham. There's some guys in that, I'm not saying trade back into the 20s. But if you this team, I looked at, for some stuff I'm putting together, I looked at last year's Packers draft, right? They picked like 15 players or something. This team is in desperate need of players. And if that involves trading back from 7 to 14, 7 to 15, I think I'm okay with that. Like, because I still think they're going to get a good, maybe not a blue chipper, but I think they're going to get a good top 15 player and get many good players in the draft later. Hopefully, knock on wood, obviously. Draft's a crapshoot. So we'll see. But
yeah.
I'm always gung-ho of trading back, and I don't think I think that overall philosophy kind of works. But I'm with you. This team has so many holes. Just draft good players. That's all this team needs to do. Just draft good players. Draft elite players, draft great players, and maybe asking too much, but just draft good players.
And look, I mean, you would absolutely rather have, an elite wide receiver than a average left tackle. And I'm not saying that Alt or Fashanu are going to be average players or whatever, so don't freak out. But ultimately, what's important is that you get the best player you can, because like, this isn't a team that's just set at all these positions and only has one hole to fill to be Super Bowl bound. They're not the, whoever you want to say, the Niners roster or the Eagles roster, or give me any roster that you feel like is somewhat complete. And the Eagles probably a bad example now given the results last season, but this isn't a team that's one player away. So like, you cannot pigeonhole yourself and should not pigeonhole yourself into thinking that one position must be the pick. It could be anything as long as it's an elite player. And the whole thing with trading back, like, I am almost always pro trade back and collect more picks. I just don't think they should trade back too far in this draft, because I do feel like that there's like 6 guys, and I listed them out, and they're the guys we've been talking about, like Alt, Fashanu, Harrison Jr., Neighbors, Odunze, and Bowers. Those 6 are the non-quarterback blue chippers in this draft class to me. And I think you have to come away with one of those 6. At least that would be my goal for the Titans if I was running them heading into the draft. And if 3 of them are on the board when you come to pick at 7 and you want to slide back to 9 or 10 and pick up a 3rd round pick or a 2nd round pick or whatever you can get for that, that is great. Like I am 100% with you if you can do that and still nab one of those guys. But I just would not want to move out of the range where I'm getting a difference maker out of that first round, because you're hoping you're not going to be drafting in the top 10 again anytime soon. So take advantage of it while you have the opportunity to get one of these guys that can be like, a multi-time all pro for you. And that's typically where those guys come from.
Well, let's talk about that, because you were talking about team building. You're talking about you have so many holes that you just need so many players, and there's so many different players you can draft and all this stuff. And I get the feeling the Tennessee Titans would agree with that sentiment. And I was talking today, and I am not sure that this team feels at a certain point that a rebuild on the fly is sustainable, or a rebuild on the fly is exactly possible. Because I get the feeling the way that Rand Carthon talk and Chad Brinker talk is like, we need to win games and our job is to win games, but this thing could take a while. Like, it's kind of like a have your cake and eat it too, talking out both sides of your mouth, because they're like, well, GMs, I'm hired to win games and we're hired to build a team and the coach needs to win and blah, blah, blah. And we know they kind of want to do a blow up last year, and they're getting their blow up started a year late. But it feels kind of like I think people need to brace themselves, because this 4th place schedule coming is not that easy.
It's a hard 4th place schedule.
4th place schedule.
Yeah,
but
they really did get screwed.
Yeah, it's the worst 4th place schedule I've ever seen. But I think people need to set the expectations that just because you saw the Texans and Colts do it in your division, I don't know if it's going to happen again. But I think the point is that I think they're wanting to build a sustainable entity in the Tennessee Titans, and they want to build it like the Green Bay Packers, because Chad Brinker was on the OTP and it was chock full of all kinds of nuggets and interesting tidbits, but it was also a very cautious thing, is a very cautionary tale, in the sense that, like, he said it could take 2 or 3 years, and he even kind of said like 4 or 5 at certain points. And he's mainly talking about building out the analytics team, the analytics department as a startup. Just hire me. I'm available. I will come work for cheap. I could be an intern for you guys. We'll help get this thing off the ground. But at a certain point, that also kind of bleeds into a rebuild and the lack of draft picks. But they have a lot of money in free agency, but they're like, well, we don't want to spend, over this amount. We're going to have a certain level that we're going to spend. I just feel like this year, I'm not sure that you're going to see a lot of big splashes from the Tennessee Titans. I think it's going to be a lot of smart moves with future years in mind, and they're going to want to build through the draft. That was said numerous times, that the lifeblood of your team is through the draft. And this lifeblood has been drained. They have been the vampire has came into the Tennessee Titans in Nashville. And maybe it was Mike Kafka at some point through the night, and he bit their neck and drained the team, the lifeblood of this team, because this team is having to get blood cycling and blood doping and transfusions like they're Lance Armstrong just to stay alive right now. So just all that to say, best player available to tie it all back is not such a bad idea when you're trying to replenish and restock and build a sustaining life force. Like, that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think fans should brace themselves for this not being like look, the Titans are not a Super Bowl contender in 2024. I know everyone's excited about the new coach, everyone's excited about the direction that this thing's going. Everyone's like, oh well, now that they're not going to run the ball on 2nd and 10 all the time, it's going to be just fireworks all over the place. I think you should brace yourself for this taking a while to really be like at Super Bowl contending levels. And look, they could be better this year. I think the hope is that you look like something like the Texans, in that you take some clear steps forward. it's obvious that you're on the right path. You get, some young players contributing and taking, meaningful steps in the right direction. But, you're ultimately like a 10-7 type of team, because I think that's really where the ceiling is. Like, you hope you fix the offensive line and that, Will Levis shows real promise and things like that. But I just don't see any path where this team is playing in the AFC Championship game a year from now. And that's okay, because look, it's going to take a minute to overcome the fact that you completely missed on the 2020 and 2021 and, looking like 2022 drafts, like completely whiffed, almost zero redeemable players. Like, and I'm not completely ready to write off 2022, because I think like Roger McCreary is a good player, not great. I think there's still hope for Chig Okonkwo being a good player, not great. Nicholas Petit-Frere, I'm not totally closing the door on him becoming like a starting offensive lineman, but and even Treylon Burks, like maybe you could see him become like a useful wide receiver. But I think the door on any of those guys being all pro,
yeah,
I'm ready to close the door on any of those
I just hope
guys
he's
ever
a
being
useful
an
wide
all-pro,
receiver.
right?
I hope he's like Chris Moore.
Which means that the Titans didn't select like a Pro Bowl level player for 3 straight years in the draft. And if you talk about like the Lions, who we referenced their draft class from 2023 earlier, if you go back to their 2022, 2021 draft classes too, those draft classes are chock full of good players. Like, I mean, Penei Sewell is an obvious example, but also they've, landed guys like Derek Barnes and Fiti Melifonwu and all these other guys that are contributing at a high level for them, all within the last 3 years. I mean, that team is young at its core. Right? Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously. That team is young at its core, and the Titans are not, right? Like, the Titans just don't have any guys on rookie contracts that are good right now. I mean, McCreary and then the guys from the 2023 class may be the exceptions, but I still don't think you can firmly say, all right, that guy's on an all-pro kind of trajectory. And ultimately, that's what you've got to have. You've got to have young guys that are on that like superstar path. And the Titans don't have any right now. So if they get 1 or 2 out of this draft class, great. Like, that's a great step. But you ultimately need like 4, 5, 6 of those types of guys to be the core of your organization. And it's going to take a little bit to get there. It just is.
Well, we'll talk about this too, but Logan said is Amy Adams-Strunk patient enough for a 2-year rebuild? And I think that from all signs of what we heard be reported about last year, that if she wasn't patient for a rebuild, I don't think Ran Carthon would still be here. I think that, Mike Vrabel would have been here and Ran Carthon would have had to go. But I think that the general sentiment inside the building is that there is patience that needs to be had. What else stood out to you in the Chad Brinker interview over at the Official Titans podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really did shed some more light on what we've been kind of asking for a while from Brinker specifically and this team as a whole, as far as like some insight into like, what are you guys actually going to do with analytics? And I thought, PK wrote about it as well, and I kind of feel the same way that he does. Is like, it was pretty illuminating that like the Titans were just not doing anything on the analytics front, because like, there was some stuff about like, well, maybe they're using the scouts to do some analytics work on the side and stuff like that during the Robinson Vrabel tenure and everything. They weren't like they were. Sure,
because their first hire was just like 2 years ago, right? Like their first like named hire, Seth Walder's first official guy. That guy we were pretty convinced was just a speak and spell they put in the trash in a corner somewhere of someone's office. It's just like they just punch in whatever they wanted to say because it just was bad. John Robinson had one analytics hire the whole time, and we knew that because he said, I am the analytics department, right? Like we knew it. And I liken it to if you guys thought John Robinson was a caveman, Mike Vrabel was like the Amish when it came to analytics. Like he used some of it, he used some electronics, and he used some of it. But ultimately he didn't really believe in it. Like ultimately it was not going to influence. You handed him a piece of paper and it was probably like, well, I don't know what this means, and I'm not going to waste my time trying to learn what it means because I'm a busy man. And
Yeah.
Chad Brinker mentioned that is like, you have to have like a note card size information of like, here are 3 things you can do. If you're overloading them, the caveman ain't going to do it. He ain't going to get it.
Well, I think that's true for any coach. I mean, like a coach can only hold so much information. Like, so if you're going to ask Brian Callahan to be an expert on, quarterback technique and what your drop needs to look like and how your progressions need to go and know the playbook and build this, offense and all this other stuff, he also can't be like a numbers wizard who understands differential equations and, how to do, regression analysis of, XYZ, whatever. Like, he doesn't need to be his expertise. He needs to have someone like an analytics department boil all that information down into here's the action items that we really feel like are strong takeaways from the data. So that's what they're going to do. And look, Brinker was definitely saying like it's going to be 2 or 3 years before we're really even seeing results from this thing. And I don't know, maybe he's
Doesn't have to be.
sandbagging a
Once
little bit
again,
there.
I am pleading for a job inside the analytics staff. I will do whatever it takes to get in.
And look, it doesn't mean that they won't get anything out of that department, but I think to really get to where they want to be, it's going to take some time, and that makes complete sense because it is a big undertaking. And teams like Philadelphia and Baltimore, specifically, have been at the cutting edge of this thing for over a decade. Like those teams have massive head starts on the Titans from that standpoint, and it's gonna take some time to catch up. Absolutely, like, and I don't. I think that's realistic from Brinker, and I liked a lot of what Brinker had to say. Frankly, I did think that there were some shots fired at Vrabel, kind of laced in with that thing, as far as he made
Demanding,
comments
not
about
demeaning,
yeah
was one I was like, well, that's definitely a shot at Vrabel.
that sounded like a direct shot at Vrabel. There was something about coming with asking questions not with the answer already in mind, or coming with questions, not answers, or whatever, to the table. I felt like that was kind of maybe a Vrabel shot, and that maybe Vrabel wasn't the most open-minded guy when it came to
Shocker.
discussing things like that. Which, yeah, I mean, look, his personality was what it was, and not everybody's cup of tea. So
Well,
I think
not all
there
32
were
teams
some
cup of tea,
shots.
apparently.
Yeah. So
I mean, did you see the latest report out of Dallas? And I don't know how much of this you could take away from. I don't know anything about A to Z Dallas, so this is not to
yeah.
say that like that discredit them or anything. I just don't know anything about this guy from A to Z Dallas. But like, apparently Vrabel wanted to coach at Dallas, and then Dallas was like, "No, we're not talking to you," which
Well,
is wild to me.
in the reasoning behind it that they offered in that piece was that
Too big.
Vrabel, well, too big, yeah, but that McCarthy, given his tenuous hold on that job, probably didn't want a viable head coaching candidate in the building.
Well, then why didn't they hire Vrabel?
Well, I see what you did there, but that was probably part of the reason that and Mike Zimmer and who was the other,
But
Ron Rivera.
McCarthy's not the one making the decision.
Apparent
McCarthy's guy is Ron
apparently,
Rivera. He's not
yeah,
making the decision.
and apparently Jerry Jones's guy is Mike Zimmer. So I think it's kind of
Yeah.
one of those things where they're going to figure it
Sounds like
out.
you're just making
But
excuses, but that's okay. We those of us that living in the real world have seen the tea leaves pretty well. I mean, it's neon lights.
and look,
Vrabel
I
wasn't as respected by the NFL as much as people think the media made it out to be. And listen, I fell into that trap too. I was
I
right there with everybody. I thought for sure he'd get a job just like that. And then as this keeps going and going and going, I'm like, and then you hear more stuff. And I don't really give a shit about the random GM that just threw that thing out there. And I think what he was trying to say was like his presence mixed with his ego is not a good mix. Sure, whatever. But it's the point of the fact is is that I don't know if anybody's really buying into this old school way anymore, and he's just gonna maybe. I don't know. I don't know where he lands, but he's got a little bit of rehab to do on his image. Maybe
And
shrink in size or something. I don't know.
and look, I think if and we don't have to go deep down this rabbit hole, but I ultimately think I agree. I thought he was going to be hired as well. I think the stuff
I mean,
that came out,
everybody did. I mean, very
it
few people, unless you're just like a pure hater of Mike Vrabel. To its core, he could do nothing right, and you're still tweeting about Mike Vrabel every chance you get to take shots at him because you're a loser and it's your new shtick. That's fine. If you're that guy, that is fine. But for the most part, 99%, even the people that didn't like Vrabel thought, because the media told us he's so well respected around the league and he will instantly get a job. He's a home run hire for anybody. And ultimately, I still think that Vrabel is still a good head coach. That has not changed my opinion. None of this has swayed anything about what I felt like at Vrabel's time here or Vrabel's opinion. But what has changed my perspective on this whole Vrabel situation is that I think the media wasn't as in touch, and we kind of get into this in the draft stuff too. What really is the feeling among the NFL? Like
see, I
I
kind
just
of
don't think the
disagree.
NFL is really feeling Mike Vrabel.
I kind of disagree. I think the reporting from Diana Rossini and Joe Rexrode at the Athletic about how things went down with Vrabel and him not playing nice with Rand and him maybe even chafing against ownership. I think that set off alarm bells for a lot of people that look, if this guy's going to come in and not, if he wants all the power in the organization, like what GM's going to hire a coach that has already made a power play once on another GM, and they're going to try to bring him in and hope he doesn't, that same dog doesn't bite again.
But that's just
Um,
you're agreeing with me then
well, but
because the media
I'm
still
saying that
talks about like
his it's not his reputation as a coach, it's his reputation as a collaborator
that
or
is
lack
one and the
thereof.
same in today's
But
NFL. You cannot
but
separate the
yeah,
two.
but
That's
I
my
think that
problem.
reporting changed opinions among ownership. Maybe I don't, because I don't know that that was an open rumor out there among NFL owners and the powers that be that wow, things are really ugly in Tennessee, because we didn't hear anything about that. That would have leaked out before. I mean, there was some stuff that got out during the season about like him and Carthon maybe not, necessarily being the closest. But I don't know how widespread that information was. So I don't know that owners couldn't have been more hot to trot about Mike Vrabel if that reporting didn't come out afterwards that basically was like, yeah, this dude was an asshole to
Man,
Rand
isn't that
Carthon. Like,
ironic that Vrabel's gal, Diana Rossini,
yeah.
you're alluding, by the way, Vrabel's mouthpiece, Diana Rossini, you're alluding that she is also ultimately the designer of his downfall. That him
Yeah.
and Joe Rexrode are the reason. I'm gonna tell Joe that tomorrow. I'm gonna say that Mike Herndon said on our podcast that it's you and yours and Diana's fault that Mike Vrabel doesn't have a job.
I mean, I think the reporting and the information basically being out there has something to do with it. Because I mean, otherwise, why would you want Dan Quinn over Mike Vrabel? I just don't understand that at
One of
all.
them's been to a Super Bowl, but that's it
Well,
is what it is.
yeah.
Someone has the better resume. I wouldn't want either if I was a coach. I think,
Big Dan Quinn guy here.
but do you want to take a victory lap over 5 defensive head coaches being hired this cycle?
I mean, yeah, I continue to just feel that that's the whole offensive coach is the only way to win thing is so overblown to me. Like, I just don't think it's true. Even like, I mean, Jim Harbaugh isn't like a play calling head coach all the time, right? Like, I think he's done it before, but I don't think he always does it. Um, so I think this whole idea that you have to have an offensive group, like, is it better to? Yes, but ultimately, like, these teams are going to hire the coach that is the best head coach, not the most offensive whiz kitty.
Can I
Bobby
also say
Slowick and
something
Ben
else
Johnson
about
may
why?
never be head coaches.
Yeah, can I say something else about why Vrabel may not have a head coaching position? Because his staff cannot be good. Like the staff you bring to the table is
Mm,
probably some uninspiring horse crap that you're gonna have to put up with.
I
And
don't
what's up
know.
with what's up with New York wanting
Everybody's
all these coaches from the Titans? Like that's just been blowing my mind. New York/New Jersey. But
pretty much all those Titans assistants have been hired at this point, right? Like that
I know
have
that's
been let
crazy.
go. Um,
Like Hoteling got a job before Mike Vrabel did.
yeah. Well, I mean,
It's
he went
wild.
back to his assistant head offensive line coach
Yeah,
role.
but still, he
So
still got a job.
yeah.
I wouldn't even trust him to be my assistant at that point. But like I find
There's
it, Tim Kelly's a tight ends coach now. He's been demoted. Arthur Smith is over with the Steelers, so now he's got a worse quarterback than Desmond Ritter at the helm and Kenny Pickett. And then you have um, Shane Bowen, who's with the Giants, which I'm kind of lukewarm on Shane Bowen, but they are about to get some fucking whiplash because there is no two defensive coordinators that are different in philosophy and how they deploy defense than Wink Martindale and Shane Bowen. They're going to get some extreme whiplash up in New York, but he may do good.
I think
But I
he's I think
funny
he's a
that he went
better
to a. I think it's funny he went to a guy that is similar to Vrabel in personality and demeanor in Brian Daboll. I just thought it was funny that he landed there of all places.
yeah, I'm it is going to be way different for them, but I do think Bowen is a good defensive coordinator. Not a great defensive coordinator, but I think he's a good defensive coordinator.
This will be a good test to see what he does and everything.
Yeah.
Anything else from the Chad Brinker pod that we've sort of derailed into a different topic on?
No, nothing really. I mean,
What
thought
about
it
the
was
Rand
interesting.
Carthon pod? I thought he had a lot of interesting things to say, talking about like player profile tapes and how they're building it out, how they're working
Yeah.
through the staff, which we haven't even got to the staff yet, and we're going to get to the staff here in just a second. But where are you at in what are you feeling better about Rand Carthon now that we're several weeks removed from that horrible press conference?
Yes, better. Really the biggest thing that's changed though to me is him landing Denard Wilson, because I think he was a big part of that.
That was
As
a
well
great
as
story surrounding all
yeah,
that, by the way.
yeah, that was really good from that. And then just the fact that it seems like he has proven to be a draw for the coaching staff and everything like that. That is a positive in his book, in my opinion. And it, I still think like even in that OTP interview, he gets so defensive with the media, even the internal media. Like they sit down and I think Mike Keith said something about really happy to have you on here, and Carthon says something like, "Oh, are you really? Like I don't, are you sure you're happy to have me on or something like that?" He's so defensive about stuff at times that it just comes across like I don't know, almost like a lack of confidence to me. That it's just like, dude, what are we doing here? So I don't know. Maybe that's just like him trying to be humble or something. Like I have
He
no idea.
seems very dry. Like a very dry, like to me, that comment wasn't as weird as I didn't know where the Eddie George conference room comment was.
Yeah, there was
That
that
one was a
too.
little, that one like, how do you not know where the conference room is? Shouldn't you know where the conference room is?
Yeah,
That one stood out to me more than the other one because other one's like, oh, like to me, I took it as like, are you sure? I mean, because it's just me. Like, it's kind of more
yeah,
self-deprecating than
yeah.
defensive. But like, I thought it was really weird they didn't know where the Eddie George conference room is, and I guess props to Eddie George for having a conference room. I think that's also weird in of itself. So that I don't know why he has a conference room. He's not dead. It's not like an immemorial conference room or something. I don't know. It's just
I
weird to me.
wonder who else. Like who else do you think has
Yeah,
rooms named
is
after
there like a
themselves?
Benji Olsen bathroom memorial? Like this is all dedicated to Kevin Mawai.
The
Like
Benji
what was
Olsen men's room on the second
yeah.
floor would be wonderful.
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was weird. Like, McNair's? It's the press conferences for McNair, right?
Is
Wasn't it
that
named
the?
after
I'm
McNair?
not sure. I should probably know that, but yeah, I don't know. I would love to know. I need to like now. I need like a map of the Titans facility with all the different names, like you have the Randall Godfrey
it's weird.
janitor's closet.
Yeah. Yeah. They have all little plaques and stuff. But I mean, like the direction of the team and the hiring of the staff, I feel really good about the staff as a whole, but I feel really good about it not only because of Brian Callahan's experience, but it seems like they're really in a groove together. And maybe this is just, it seems totally different between him and Mike Vrabel, but it really feels like Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan are using this time to build out a really good staff. They're obviously taking their time, going through a lot of candidates. They alluded that we haven't even heard of some of the candidates that or hasn't been released of some of the candidates, but they are they're taking their time, but they're also taking their time to find their rhythm together and, finding new things out about each other, finding where they click and where they don't click and where they can pick up. And I think that's a really good sign for the future, but we'll see. But I think that's a better way to start than not start.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, they it almost seems like a love fest over there between, Brian and Rand at this point, which is good. I mean, you want it to be that way. I appreciated him giving, well, one, I appreciated him admitting that he probably should have been, I guess, more active with the media at times last year, because that's something that we've griped about a little bit, particularly with the Kevin Byard trade and all that. And then I really did like that he gave some explanation for like why they chose not to go to the Senior Bowl. Although he was a little defensive about that too, like saying like,
well, I don't know if he's really defensive, but man, people really harped on that stupid ass shit.
well, it was overblown. I mean, I was a little surprised that they weren't there, just because like I kind of felt like that's like
the
a
general.
big,
I saw someone keep a tally of people that he asked if the general manager was there or not. Now, these aren't all eyewitness accounts, and some of these were only verified by one. There's like
yeah.
18 general managers.
Okay,
was
so
there.
it's more common than
Yeah, it's a lot more common than what we thought, and I don't know if that's because there was a lot of head coaching openings and all this kind of stuff. I don't know what it was for, but apparently this number keeps dwindling in the wrong direction, but the scout number and the media number goes in the right direction.
Yeah.
So that's what this is. I can't remember the name. I think I bookmarked it, but it was some guy that like covers the NFL from a business perspective and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, and I thought his explanation made sense that, like, hey, they wanted to be able to have people have these coaches come through and interview and be in Nashville, see the facilities, things like that. I mean, even like the facilities are new, right? Like, I mean, all the offices are new. They've really remodeled St. Thomas Sports Park, so like that is actually a selling point for the Titans now. And people, don't always think about that stuff because they view it as like, I guess every NFL team's basically the same. It's all about like who the players are or whatever. But to me, like, I mean, look, going to nice facilities every day is a nice thing. If you're a head coach and you're going to spend all your time there, by the way, right? Like, because those guys work crazy hours during the season. So like having a nice facility to be able to work those crazy hours in is kind of nice. So like it all goes into like selling the coaches on coming to Tennessee, being a part of things there and everything like that. So like I did feel like his explanation of why they didn't go made sense. And
it seems like they're letting Denard Wilson fill out his staff pretty much because I know there's a connection between Steve Jackson, if I'm not mistaken, and Brian Callahan, but Denard Wilson and Rand Carthon had overlap really, and then Denard Wilson has 2 overlaps with Steve Jackson, 1 overlap with Frank Bush. So I feel like kind of hiring his own staff for the most part. It's probably kind of similar to what they've been doing with Brian Callahan. It's probably they're all 3 in a room, all 3 interviewing, all this kind of stuff. A couple of different things, just real quick. Can GMs talk to players at the Senior Bowl? If not, then why be there? It's a speed dating thing. Coaches can coach some Senior Bowl players if they want to. Mike Tomlin jumps in on some drills and offers coaching, and they can kind of talk on the field. But for the most part, it's a very speed dating atmosphere. If anybody reports, and it's funny because I think Sam Phelan did this like an hour later after I was telling someone about this. But if anybody reports so and so talked to the Tennessee Titans at the Senior Bowl, yeah, no shit. Every play, it's literally you're in a room and the players literally go around and speed date. I mean, that's what Cole Strange described as speed dating. So you don't really gain too much from being down at the Senior Bowl. The combines where you get to know the prospects and all that kind of stuff. Andrew King, and this will lead us into our coordinators talk. So thoughts on the guy they interviewed for special teams coordinator from the Giants? That would be Thomas McGahee. I'm out on him. He's not that good. I feel like it's pretty much more Craig Ackerman. But I don't know what the influence of the players are. I don't know the ins and outs of the Giants special teams. I could just tell you that based on Rick Gosselin, whose life is special teams and ranking and rating, it's not that good. So I don't know anything other than that about him. But I'm just kind of like, let's try to do someone better.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, look, do special teams matter? Yes. Do I care a ton about who the special teams coordinator is? I really don't. I mean, look,
not until it's Craig Ackerman, until he reaches Craig Ackerman levels.
As long as the new guy doesn't get 2 punts blocked in a row and your all-pro punter injured, I'm fine with whoever they hire. I mean, like I will admit that I do not study special teams play across the league enough to know who's running really cool shit on punt block and things like that. I don't do it. I don't care that much about it. So I'm not going to have a strong opinion no matter who they hire as a special teams coordinator.
All right.
Unless it's Bill Belichick, and then that's an A+ hire.
A+ hire. Let's talk about some coaches and stuff like that. Just a real quick, because I think that we both kind of liked Denard Wilson. And, this kind of stood out in the Rand Carthon interview. Strike fast. Really seemed like the Tennessee Titans striked fast on their guys, or struck fast, I guess you'd say, on the guys that they wanted. They obviously wanted Brian Callahan. Nick Holtz was number one offensive coordinator. The first offensive coordinator interviewed seemed to be the guy. Denard Wilson was the first one that they wanted to interview. Seemed like he was the guy. So, in speaking to Denard Wilson, because I think that's the coordinator out of the 2 coordinator hires. That's the one that matters 100 times more than whoever the offensive coordinator is, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But Denard Wilson seems like the Tennessee Titans match made in heaven, and it seems really hard to pick apart the hire itself. Next week at Second Inbox, I'm going to talk about what to expect because we really don't know where his influence mainly lies because he's been with the Rams, he's been with the Jets, he's been with the Eagles, he's been with the Falcons, or with the Ravens. It's one of those fucking bird teams. Been with the Ravens. I don't really know what his influence is and what to expect. So I'm going to try and figure that out. But overall, it sounds like the Tennessee Titans got one of the steals of the entire coaching cycle in Denard Wilson.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that was one of the things he mentioned in the OTP interview was that multiple coaches coaches that they interviewed had Denard Wilson as part of their prospective staff. You know, all coaches come and interview and they say, all right, this is who I'd go get for all these different positions. And it sounds like multiple coaches were targeting Wilson. And, you know, I think we know that other teams were also pressing for Wilson besides, you know, those who would have had those interviews. So, you know, the Giants were pressing for him. You know, so I think he was a coveted guy out there. So the fact that they were able to land him is huge. And look, I mean, the one question I really, because like unquestionably his, you know, background, his experience, what he's been able to do with secondaries has been elite at every stop along the way. You know, the drop off in the Eagles secondary performance this past year after he left. The way that the Ravens played this past season under his tutelage in the secondary. Geno Stone having 7 receptions, incredible results in almost every stop. So like that much is clear. I love that he comes from Mike McDonald and has spent a year, working under him, kind of understanding his defensive philosophy. Yeah, Jonathan Gannon as well, who had a ton of success with the Eagles. Obviously, I love all of the things about his background. The one question is going to be, like how does he do as a defensive play caller with that, responsibility in his hands? And I guess there's the question of like, you've got new play callers on both sides of the ball now. Is that a problem? I don't really think it is. And the way that they've built the staff is
I
interesting
agree.
because like you've got a 39-year-old head coach, 39-year-old offensive coordinator, 41-year-old defensive coordinator, but then your position coaches are all old as shit. You got, 54, 56, 61, and 67, I think it was. Among the position coaches. So it's kind of this like inverted structure where the young guys are kind of setting the agenda, setting the course, and then the older guys, who have experience are the ones implementing and passing it down to the players, which is kind of an interesting setup. And I think there will be coaches who have experience, to lean on in the building. Obviously, Bill Callahan has been an offensive coordinator. He's been a head coach. Um, we know that Frank Bush, I believe, had been an interim defensive coordinator at one point. So he's called plays before, not a ton, but he's done it before. And I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up hiring, 1 or 2 more coaches that have that kind of experience on the staff for roles underneath these guys. So I'm not that worried about the whole age thing or experience thing with the top guys. I think it's exciting that they're going in a new direction.
Even Nick Holtz, you're not worried about the experience aspect? Because I contend
his resume is not impressive. It's a trust hire.
It's as equally as impressive as Bobby Slowick's, if not more. It's 17 years.
No, it's not, because you're completely ignoring
because
the fact that Bobby
Shanahan.
Slowick turned CJ Stroud into like a superstar this year.
Listen, but when he was hired as offensive coordinator, he had 9 years of experience, and he has 17.
Yeah,
Holtz
but I mean,
17.
but Slowick was at least position coach level or higher for more years than Holtz was, because Holtz has
he was never a position coach. He was quality control coach, and he was passing game coordinator for 2 years. He's pass game specialist and passing games coordinator. So he's a specialist and then a coordinator for 1 year.
It's not far apart, right? Like, so I don't disagree that it's
17 years versus 9 years. But go ahead.
But I mean, I don't think that.
I mean, just facts. I mean, I'm sorry that everybody's like, and people wanted to hire Bobby Slowick as head coach. So, I'm just saying, I think there's a lot of parsing of what experience means in the NFL world.
I think there's also an argument to be made that, like, hey, he spent like 10 years as a like quality control level assistant, basically, and wasn't promoted to a position coach level, right? Like, Slowick has had a quicker acceleration in his career than Holtz has. So, like, I don't find Holtz's resume impressive at all. Like, the thing with Holtz is that, I don't think he's like the next, superstar offensive coordinator or head coach or whatever. I think that's a purely trust and like comfortability hire for Brian Callahan, who, I mean, he's going to Callahan's going to set the agenda for the offense anyways. He is going to install the offense. He's going to play, make the play calls. Holtz is there to be a like high level secretary, basically, for Brian Callahan. He's going to impart what Callahan wants.
He's Zach Taylor's Brian Callahan. He's that
guy. With less of a resume than what Brian Callahan had going to Zach Taylor. I think it's fine. Like, I don't really care. I cared less about that hire than I did the offensive line coach hire, than I did the defensive coordinator hire, than I, do the defensive backs coach hire, frankly. So I just don't care that much about it because I think it's largely going to be a reflection of whatever Brian Callahan wants. And hopefully Holtz does bring some ideas to the table, like it seems like Callahan did for the Bengals. But I don't know anything about this guy really. I mean, like, I'm not going to
And I
sit here
think
and
that's
like,
the big issue. And to me, that's the biggest issue with this. If we knew a little bit more about Nick Holtz, everybody would be falling over themselves one way or the other to either say it's a really good hire or really bad hire because we'd have more information. It's like when nobody knew who Bobby Sloak was until he became offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. I'm not saying that he's going to be, because he's not a play caller, we're not going to really know what Nick Holtz really brings to the table unless he's fired. That's the key for me is like, everybody's like, well, we'll know if Nick Holtz is bad in a few years. Well, will we? Because like,
no.
then we're kind of saying that we know that Brian Callahan's going to be bad in a few years because, which you will, but it's Brian Callahan's offense. He's the play caller. How much are we going to get into this thing where all the bad plays are Nick Holtz and all the good plays are Brian Callahan's? Is that
And
where this is headed?
we do not need to go down that road at all because that's like the biggest like unprovable thing ever that people just love to get into and like wrap their brain into a pretzel trying to
Yeah.
rationalize whichever
I mean,
side they
that's what's
want.
eventually going to happen, right? I mean, let's go ahead and
Maybe.
predict it now. We should just put it out in a tweet. Officially official. All good plays are Brian Callahan. All bad plays, Nick Holtz.
That's right. He's in charge of the bad plays for this offense. So
Because I
no,
don't think you're going to be able to say Nick Holtz is bad at being an offensive coordinator. There's nothing that we're going to see that we are going to have tangible evidence without being inside the building
right.
to be able to say, well, Nick Holtz is a bad offensive coordinator because it's Brian Callahan doing everything and he's delivering the message of Brian Callahan and maybe going to have some input here and there, but Brian Callahan ultimately has final say. He is there for me, in my mind. This is why I never really cared about if this was Eric Studesville or Norm Chow or Norm
But you would have
Turner.
preferred Thomas Brown, right? Like if that was an
Yeah, I
option.
mean, but that's just because I'm a Thomas Brown fan, and I feel like he got a raw deal at the Carolina Panthers, and I think he's a really good head coach. He's got a tangible background, right? Like I would be excited for Eric Studesville. I'd be excited for Thomas Brown. I'm less excited for Nick Holtz. I'm not like all up in arms about it, but I just want to say that I think like this idea that this is the hiring of it being drilled down to the hiring of your high school drinking buddy, back in the day, and then say, well, people would kill Vrabel for this. Well, Vrabel ended up not being killed for this and then got killed for it because he was really bad at it. If Nick
people did kill Vrabel for hiring his buddies. That was a constant complaint.
They hired it was Texans coordinators, but Texans coaches. It wasn't really buddies, Texans coach, but he also, because those coaches sucked, he deserved to get bashed for it and continuing to.
But I mean, again, like it'll be
That's
an unprovable thing whether or not Holtz is good.
Brian Callahan
if he
has to be given
sucks,
the benefit of the doubt.
No, I agree he does, and I'm not bashing the hire, but I'm just saying that a lot of people who are like, "Oh yeah, Nick Holtz, that's great, sounds good, whatever," would have absolutely crushed Mike Vrabel if he'd hired, his buddy from whatever high school he went to in Ohio,
But again, he earned that.
But no. But I'm saying, okay. But listen. I'm saying if he'd hired him as defensive coordinator, right? Like if he'd hired him as Shane Bowen, if Shane Bowen had been his high school teammate, and had barely had any experience,
he earned
and then
that badge of
him,
honor. Is what I'm saying. Brian Callahan has not earned that badge of honor yet. He may end up earning that badge of honor if Nick Holtz comes in and he's beating,
I'm just saying it is funny. It's objectively funny that everyone was so mad about Vrabel hiring his buddies and complained about it incessantly for years. And two of the new head coaches hires are his dad and his high school friend.
Which everybody wanted his dad, by the way.
Yes, of course. Like his dad is a home run hire. Like that's part of the appeal. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, but like
that's what Vrabel should have learned is how to hire his good friends.
Well, he should have hired Luke Fickell, right? Like I wanted him to hire Luke Fickell for forever, but I just
get Ryan Day as offensive coordinator. We both were on board with that. Get the good ones, not the rejects.
I'm not
That's
saying I hate it, but I do think that there's questions like, will he fire Nick Holtz if Nick Holtz sucks? And I'm less worried about his dad because, like, his dad is just not gonna suck. Like, period. He's got a long enough track record. He's just been awesome everywhere he's been. He's one of the best position coaches in the NFL, if not the best. So I have zero worry that like Bill Callahan is not going to be bad at his job in Nashville for the first time in 30 years, right? Like, even if the offensive line is not great, it is not going to be Bill Callahan's fault. You'll never convince me of it that Bill Callahan is the reason that this offensive line is bad. So I'm not worried about him and his dad. But
my thing is
Holtz,
like, yeah.
if Holtz is
I mean,
bad, will he
you can be
fire him?
worried about it or whatever, but I think he kind of put it. Did you say he was a glorified secretary or something, or administrative
Yeah.
assistant or something like
Yeah,
that?
he's a
Yeah,
glorified secretary. Like he in
I mean,
I
what's he really going to do wrong, right? Like, I mean, I guess that's the point. But my overall theme with this whole discussion is you can't turn around. You can't say, well, the biggest pro for Brian Callahan is that the staff he can assemble is going to be a good staff. We know that he can assemble a good staff, and then he makes one hire that nobody knows anything about because we just don't have that a lot of information. Like the one YouTube video is Bobby Slowick. I mean, he looks like Kmart Bobby Slowick. It's a
someone
trudge to get through.
someone messaged me and said he looks like beans.
Yeah, I got that one too.
And I'm like, yes, he does.
Yeah,
Now I
he
can't
does.
unsee it.
But you can't turn around then say at the first sign of a hire that you're not familiar with that this is automatically a bad hire. And like
It's
that,
not a no,
that's just
and I'm not saying it's a bad hire. I'm just saying
and I'm not saying you are, but
not
people
impressive.
are.
Yeah.
Got
It's a comfort
and
thing.
that kind of answers Logan's questions because Brian Callahan is new, could do no wrong. I think it's because you should allow your coach to have the benefit of the doubt. Vrabel had the benefit of the doubt until he didn't deserve the benefit of the doubt anymore.
And look, to that point,
Logan
people should not be going to the mat to say like Nick Holtz is awesome. Like, what a great hire.
Yeah,
I can't believe we got Nick Holtz. Like, nobody should be saying that.
I'm
I
just
haven't
arguing
seen
the
anybody
semantics of
saying
like,
that.
oh, he doesn't have experience. And I'm like, well, neither did Bobby Slowick. And are you just saying because he rubbed elbows with Shanahan that he gets like the bump? I don't know. It's just, I feel like some of this stuff just is like people just need to take a breath and not have to grade everything, even though you can't. But Logan Grady said, will he fire his dad if Raiden still false starts every game? I believe it was in PK's article. If he false starts every game, he's not playing.
Yeah.
You get one chance with Bill Callahan. I believe that's how Alan Faneca put it into PK's article, if I'm not mistaken. Like, you get one chance. It may have been Duke Manyweather. I've listened to so much football content. Everything is getting forced. But someone said you get one chance with Bill Callahan, and you better learn how to do it, and you better get it done right, and you better keep on doing it because that's how it's going to work. So the false start thing ain't going to fly with Bill Callahan.
Yeah.
Tyke Tolbert. We haven't talked about Tyke Tolbert. I get the feeling that some people are a little underwhelmed by this, but for the most part, home run hire. I think the football knowers think it's home run hire. I'd be interested to know in this Tyke Tolbert discussion. I need to find someone that's the next time Tyke Tolbert's available for interview. If you're listening to this and you're a media member, that's going to be either at the combine or somewhere. I would like to know what his involvement was in the draft process and drafting Anquan Bolden, Lee Evans, these guys he's being given credit for developing. Did he recognize their talents? Because that's Aaron Glenn's kind of was like, put me in a room with 5 minutes with the DB and I'll tell you if he's good or not. Is that Tyke Tolbert? Like, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that too. And like, I don't have a strong opinion on Tyke Tolbert, to be honest. I mean, I think, he's a career wide receivers coach. He's had some good ones. He's had some bad ones over the years. I know Bears fans weren't necessarily like over the moon about him. But then again, DJ Moore had a fantastic year, but DJ Moore is awesome. And I talk about this all the time, like assigning all of the responsibility for good players being good to their position coach is not fair. Just like it's not fair to assign all of the responsibility for bad players being bad to their position coach is not fair. So, it's hard all you can do is judge him based off of his wide receiver success and stuff like that. But look, Brian Callahan spent a good amount of time with him in Denver. They won a Super Bowl together in 2015. I think it's, obviously someone that he has a high opinion of, that he respects. And to me, like, again, like, that's good enough. Like, he's going to teach the techniques that Brian Callahan once taught. And also, Nick Holtz, his background is as a wide receiver from like his playing career, which, I think that doesn't make him like necessarily more of an expert than Tyke Tolbert on wide receiver play, but he's probably going to have some opinions there as well. So yeah, I think as long as he is implementing and correctly communicating that stuff, and I think he's been continuously a wide receivers coach at the NFL level for like 21 years now. So clearly he's not terrible at his job. But I mean, like, is he better than Rob Moore? Hopefully, I don't know.
100,000%. I can go ahead and tell you that.
Their careers are kind of the same, right? Like they've been a wide receiver coach for a long time.
Someone has way more 1,000-yard receivers on their resume than Rob Moore does.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Rob Moore did a good job with AJ Brown. I don't know, like
he got one. Who's your quarterback coach? Who's the quarterback coach for the Tennessee Titans? Your guess.
I'm gonna say Bo Hardegree. I know that name's been
That's
out
where
there,
I'm leaning
for a while, but yeah, we'll see what happens. But I could see that.
I'd say Bo Hardegree. I wouldn't be surprised if it's David Shaw, though. That'd be interesting.
I would like
But
that
I would
hire,
say-
actually, because
Yeah.
like I know people have soured on David Shaw for whatever reason, like, but that dude is incredibly intelligent. All you have to do is listen to him speak for more than like 5 minutes, and like you will find yourself liking David Shaw. And I think he's a guy just based on I actually recently listened to him on an interview. I think it was with Ryan Russillo. And like I could see him connecting well with Will Levis, which ultimately is the biggest, most important qualifier for anybody who's hired to that position is, are they going to get along well with Will Levis? Can they teach Will Levis? Can they bring the stuff to the table for Will Levis? So, and I think David Shaw could do that.
Well, that will do it for us. Football and Other F Words. Mike, tell the people what they can get if they subscribe to paulkarski.com today or tomorrow or whenever they go to paulkarski.com. What did you write about?
Well, this week you can read all about Bill Callahan. I'm obsessed with Bill Callahan, and how he can take, and how he has a history of taking mediocre to bad offensive lines and making them elite very, very quickly. And how I think the Titans could manage to do that in 2024. So you can read all about that.
You want to know how me and Stoney partied one morning at the Mobile? We got our day started up at the top. We watched Alex Gibbs talk about wide zone concepts for an hour and a half right when we woke up. And Stoney was like, what'd you search to find this? Because I want to watch more. Because there's all kinds of videos of Alex Gibbs cussing and talking about and designing on. And this was the videos are from 2015, by the way, or at least they were uploaded in 2015. Maybe they were taken earlier because he's using a projector and he's writing on the little clear film and all that kind of stuff. But he mentions, well, yeah, it'd have been 2015 because he mentions Brian Callahan coaching offensive line with the Cowboys. And so this was 2014, I think, going into 2015. And this thing looks like it was shot in 1970. Like it is. I don't know who put this together, but it is so bad. But it's good stuff. I mean, it's good, fun stuff to watch if you're interested in football.
And Alex Gibbs, who is like the godfather of the wide zone, scheme, has called Bill Callahan the best teacher of that scheme in the history of football. So like, that is the kind of guy that you're like. I think the Titans are gonna like. I am so excited as a Tyjae Spears fantasy dynasty owner for next season. I mean, I think he's just going to go nuts. So,
stackingtheinbox.com is where you can read all of our stuff. Me, Stoney, and Trey got a lot coming down the pipeline. It's off-season time. Now's the time to subscribe to stackingtheinbox.com. We're going to have all kinds of off-season tools, off-season talk. Me and Stoney are going to build a big board. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. StackingTheBucks.com, 440 Sports, football show Mondays and Wednesdays. The Hot Read podcast is also there. Of course, football and other F words. Bluegrass Beverages is our sponsor. Been serving the Hendersonville area for over 50 years, getting them drunk, getting them laid, having some good times. Bluegrass Beverages are our longtime sponsor here. Go to Hendersonville, Tennessee, get you some alcohol. For Mike Herndon, gosh, I'm so sick of talking about football. For Mike Herndon, Pack Lines. This has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.